Bookbugs, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be updating you guys on the Audra Winter drama and just kind of getting you up to speed before moving into the second part of this video, which is going to be my highly requested finishing the edit of the first chapter that I started in my previous video. So I just want to kind of go through the points that I found the most interesting and that I think are important context for this situation. And I want to know what you guys think about it in the comments below because nobody in my real life will talk to me about this. So I do want to know your thoughts. So Audra Winter posted this update video, and Book Lover Laura is an account that has a video like going through Audra Winter's video kind of piece by piece and talking about it. So if you're interested in like a full video breakdown, then I would direct you to her, but I'm just going to talk about the things that I think are interesting. So without further ado, the first thing, which is actually a sad thing that we're going to start off with, is that she says that she's been experiencing a lot of harassment and that she's been doxxed because of the backlash. So I do want to say that like a lot of the comments that I've seen have been constructive and have been people trying to give her advice and help her move forward from this and help her create a better product after this, but it is the internet, and so of course there are a lot of people being malicious and hateful in her comments, and I really do feel bad for her. Like, I really do have a lot of sympathy for that because, and I know that a lot of people are more skeptical of her and her intentions than I am being right now. In my last video I said that I don't think it's that impressive to have worked on this book for 10 years because she started when she was 12, and I don't find 12-year-olds writing impressive, but I can imagine, I can understand that this must be so devastating to her, this world, this concept that she's been working on for a very large portion of her life. She's 22 and she says she's been working on this for 10 years, almost half her life. This concept and this story, this world that has grown up with her, that she has created like over the course of her entire adult life and most of her adolescence. I think that's got to be really brutal to finally put it out into the world and for it to get this response. And I really do empathize with that, and I really do have a lot of sympathy for her. And it's got to be such a terrible, rude awakening. And I hope that she is able to sort out who is being constructive and who is just being malicious, so that she's able to kind of filter through the feedback that she's getting and able to say what is constructive, what is helpful, what is going to be productive versus what is just people being, you know, mean on the internet. And I think that this is really a testament to the importance of beta readers and writing groups, because it seems to me, kind of the impression that I've been getting from this is that this is truly the first time she's having genuine critique on her work, and that she's been surrounded by a lot of big yes people in her life. That's kind of just the impression that I get from this reaction, is that nobody has ever really given her genuine and like unfiltered response to this book. It seems like a lot of the people who have been reading the book previously and who have given her feedback previously are people who work for her, or are, I assume, people in her life, her friends or family, but it seems like a lot of her employees. And it's like, of course they're gonna tell you that it's good because they want to keep their job. And it seems like if there was any criticism in the past, maybe she's written it off. But really what I feel is that like this is the first time she's really putting it out there. I don't think that she ever set out to scam people. That's an accusation that I've seen kind of thrown out, is that she's making a cash grab or that she's scamming. I don't think that's ever her intention. I would like to believe that that's not what she was ever planning on doing. That was never, like, she never had any malicious intent. But I mean, the fact that the second printing, the revised version, is a special edition and has increased in cost isn't a great look in that regard. It doesn't bode in her favor in that regard. But I really do believe that she didn't mean for this to be received this way. It seems to me like I really do get the impression that she just didn't realize the book was going to get this response. I really do feel like she just straight up didn't realize that the book wasn't well written, that she didn't realize that people were going to think it's bad. I think that she was more focused on the art and the business side, and she got kind of caught up in this feeling of being a 22-year-old building a studio is what she calls it, this like creative studio, having this team of artists and feeling like an entrepreneur, making 100,000, like more, making six figures on the pre-sale alone before the book is even in people's hands, before people have even read any snippet of the book, making six figures. I think that maybe that just kind of got to her head and she wasn't actually caught up in the story itself. She wasn't actually focusing her attention on the writing aspect of it, and that's kind of why we got into this situation. It's just a misallocation of her focus, and that's my impression. I know that some people might have different impressions, and I would be very interested to hear if you guys have want to share that in the comments, but that's my impression. I don't think she was malicious. I think that this was genuinely a fuck up. So another thing from this video that I think is interesting is that she said that she's going to be revising 1 to 2 chapters a week. I don't know how many chapters there are, so I don't know how many weeks that's going to be. But I think that going chapter by chapter and like editing and revising and rewriting is maybe not the best strategy for her. I think that what she needs to change and what she needs to focus on is going to be more holistic. It's going to be thematic. It's going to be pertaining to plot arcs, character arcs, that kind of thing, and that's not confined to a single chapter. So I think that what she should do is have a developmental editor, and beta readers go through the entire book, and then the developmental editor kind of tell her how she can shape those things better over the course of the book, not just in each chapter. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense, but that's actually something that she doesn't talk about in the video. So in the video, she says that she's going to be sourcing a copy editor and a proofreader. Those are both relatively late phase in the editing process, and I think that what she really needs before that, more than anything, is a developmental editor. A developmental editor is going to be able to tackle the story as a whole, is going to be able to tell her how she can restructure things, give her advice for how she can move the plot, develop the characters, stuff like that is going to be the job of a developmental editor. Copy editor and proofreading, that's going to be when the book is finished. That's what you need. So I think that, again, she's kind of putting the cart before the horse. She's already talking about basically editing a final product with this proofreader when the story hasn't even been developed. She needs a developmental editor. She talks about having meetings like every day on a call for hours with her team of artists, and I assume others, but the artists are always what stick out to me. And it just kind of feels like the artists aren't gonna care about the things that are happening in this meeting, about the like development of the story. Their job is to do the art, not develop the story. But yeah, so she's still, to my impression, is very focused on the business side. She's very interested, I think, in being an entrepreneur, which is a worthwhile goal. Again, she's having these meetings every day for hours at a time, talking about the development of the story, talking about the process of writing, I guess. And it just seems like the impression that I got was that there is a lot of talking about developing the story, and there is a lot of art about the developing story, but there is not very much writing of the developing story. And so that was sticking out to me as a red flag. She also said that she has artists who are drawing concept art for the scenes as she's describing them, as she's describing the story to the artists, and then using that concept art kind of as a visual reference while she's writing. And that is insane to me. It's very cool. It's very cool to have this kind of multimedia approach to it. And that's another thing that she mentioned, is that she wants the world of Guardian. I was saying Guardian in the last video. I think I just thought it sounded more fantasy and cool, but she pronounces it like Guardian. The world of Guardian to be a multimedia franchise, I guess. She says they want to go multimedia. Again, girl, we're putting the cart before the horse. We don't even have a finished product. We don't even have the book yet. The book is the product. The book is the thing that you are selling, and it does not exist in a completed form yet. And we're already talking about going multimedia. I think it's a really cool idea to have the artist working with you, but it just seems unnecessary and it seems extraneous and it seems like honestly a drain on resources when you could be focusing on having, you know, a developmental editor. I have seen it mentioned by a couple people at this point that it seems like maybe she would be interested in doing a graphic novel. And obviously, here's the thing, a graphic novel that has beautiful art and a bad story is still a bad graphic novel, so the story would still need work and she would still have to do basically the same thing that she's doing now in order to make the story better so that the graphic novel could do well. But it does seem like she's really, really interested in art. Like that really seems to be what she wants from this world. She wants it to be a visual work of art. And so I'm curious maybe if she'll respond to those questions of why aren't you doing a graphic novel. Of course, again, she would still have to make the story good, but she seems like a very art focused person. She seems like a person who really enjoys art and enjoys supporting artists and having artists working with her and developing concept art with artists. I think she would enjoy a graphic novel. One of the final things that I wanted to talk about from this video is just the team that I've been mentioning, because maybe some of you guys are better detectives than me and you can figure out what's going on with this team, but I just don't really understand the logistics of this team at all. It seems to me like they might all be freelancers or contract workers. She said something about, creating this studio with employees and contract workers. So I don't know what that means because I'm assuming that she's not in the position to be paying salaried employees and providing health benefits and all that. She mentioned at one point Guardian LLC. And so I'm wondering if that's a real LLC or if she just said that. I just don't quite understand the need for this team. I think that a lot of it is just of like we have this entire team, this whole creative studio, and we don't have a book. Like that's what's mind-boggling to me, and I don't understand how it's being paid for. I don't understand where the finances are coming from. She said in some Q&A post that she used her savings to start this, and then of course the pre-sale money was again like six figures, so she had that money to create this company. But I mean, she's talking about like multiple artists. I think I've heard said like 15 artists, and now talking about a full-time in studio copy editor and proofreader, and like that's gonna eat through any amount of money really fast, especially if you're having your artists drawing concept art for the story while you're describing it. It just seems like this is extremely expensive, and if she has the money to do it, then cool, more power to her. She is completely free to do whatever she wants with her money, but I do worry that she's going to be putting herself into financial straits that she can't accommodate. Like, I'm afraid that she's going to just completely bankrupt herself doing this, and then she's not going to have, like, it would be so easy to just blow all your money on this, the way that she's running this operation. It would be so easy to just completely be broke at the end of this and still not have a book to sell. And the book is already going to be a hard sell by the time it comes out because of this drama, because of the initial reception to it. The Goodreads score rating is really low, so anybody who's not familiar with the book who looks it up is going to see that first. It's gonna be a hard sell to get sales for this book in the first place. So I just don't know if we're in the position to be spending all this money on so many different things. I don't really understand why she couldn't have paid a single artist commission for a cover, maybe a map inside the book, and maybe like the end pages could have some concept art on the end pages. One or two, maybe like one internal like insert of art in the book. But this seems like a lot of art that probably isn't even going to make it into the print. And of course I support artists. I have my own artist stuff back there. But of course I support artists, and of course I support artists being paid fairly for their work. But I think that maybe she should have just commissioned an artist for this, because another thing that she mentioned is royalties. And so I'm wondering how many people are getting royalties. She said that everybody who worked on the book is getting royalties from it. And so it's like, girl, I don't even know if you're going to be making anything from this. It's great that she's keeping the artists employed. I just don't know if it's sustainable for her to do. And I don't know that it is helping her in any, I know that it's not helping her in any way to be having all this outpour of art for the book that doesn't exist, you know, because she's not selling an art book, she's selling a book. And if she wanted to do an art book, if she wanted to do a graphic novel, or even just like a concept book, I think that could be a really interesting project for her. I think she would be interested in that. I think what happened, my hypothesis, all right, my hypothesis is that she has these really grand ideas of being a multimedia franchise like Game of Thrones, like Harry Potter, but these things are not the norm. And of course that's her goal. Of course most fantasy writers probably have visions of being the next Game of Thrones, of being the next Harry Potter, and having, you know, live action series and what else? A stage play in the case of Harry Potter, movies and TV and music, all of these things, you know. I'm sure that most fantasy writers would love for that to be the case, but you can't force something into that status. You can't force a pop culture phenomenon like this. It's not something, there are so many steps between, you know, releasing Harry Potter 1 and the construction of Harry Potter land at Universal. You know, we can't go from one to the other that quickly. It has to evolve over years and years of work. It has to amass fans and like go through all of these things. She talked about, I think, like a tabletop game, like video games, that kind of stuff. All of that can only happen if the book is successful in the first place. There's actually a bad example. This seems like exactly the kind of thing that would make a good board game to board game people, which I'm not. Even very popular fantasy series don't have that. Brandon Sanderson doesn't have, you know, a world at Universal Studios. He doesn't have a movie series or anything like that. Maybe he will one day, but you know, all of that stuff doesn't happen for everybody. And yeah, anyway. And it's entirely reliant on the initial success of the product, which doesn't exist yet. However, some good news for us, going back to what I said about the cost of the book being a special edition. So the price of the book increased by $10 because the second printing is going to be a special edition. But in response to that, Audrey Winter has lowered the price by $5. So we're still at a net increase of $5, but it is lower than $10. And it is currently on sale on the TikTok shop I saw because I got an ad for it today. It's been rough going for the pre-sales. There's, at this point in time on Wednesday, there were less than 30 sold, but that number can only grow. Okay, so with that said, let's get into the editing portion of the video. I will talk about my credentials for a second because I didn't mention that in the last video. I did my bachelor's in English, summa cum laude, if you even care. And I have since pivoted and I'm doing my master's not in English, in something slightly related, but also completely unrelated. There was a phase of my life where I thought that I wanted to go into publishing or editing. So I have experience in, I've done my time and served my sentence in the unpaid internships of that field. And I've also worked with university publications as an editor. So I have not like professional 9-to-5 salary experience with editing, but I have done professional editing for professional publications and for like fiction novels with publishing houses. So, you know, I'm not a professional. It is no longer a career goal of mine to be a professional, maybe because I got experience in the field. This is not a professional opinion, this is a YouTube video, so keep that in mind as well. Also, as part of my bachelor's degree, I would have to read my classmates' writing every week and critique it, and then on my week I would have to have my writing critiqued, so I have been in the literary critiques and been critiqued myself. I'm not an expert, but I do feel like I have enough credentials to give my 2 cents on this. Okay, so some disclaimers, because I got a couple of comments from people on my last video saying like, you can't just change that. These are suggestions, they're not changes. If I were acting as an editor, which I am not because this is a YouTube video, this would be sent back to the author, who would be expected and actually obligated to either confirm, alter, or flat reject the suggestions that I'm about to leave. So if I change a word in a sentence or change a grammar structure or anything like that, the author is completely within their right to defend their original choice or just reject the suggestion because they don't like it. This is not like a final cut of anything. And so, like I said in the last video, I'm not trying to pass myself off as a better writer than Audra Winters or pass any kind of judgment on her or her work. This is purely for fun, to practice my writing and editing skills, hopefully help anybody who is an aspiring writer. In my views, I get a lot of comments from people saying that like you are also writers and that this is helpful just to kind of work through, see what's working, see what's not working. So really that's the goal of this, trying to be as productive as possible as we can be. I don't really mean for this to find its way into the author's feed or anything. And I'm not going to submit an application to her audition process as she is searching for an editor, because I'm a grad student, I don't have time to be doing that. But if the author happens to see this, she is obviously completely free to either accept or deny any of the suggestions that I'm about to make. If she likes any of the edits, she is free to use them. If she doesn't like the edits, then she can ignore them. Disclaimer's done. Now I'm going to establish the parameters of what we're doing here. So we're going to be doing a little bit of everything because we're the only person here. We're tackling this as a single person. Ideally, multiple people in multiple roles would take on this job, but it's just us for now, so we're all alone in it. I have some structural suggestions that would be more in line with like what a developmental editor would do, kind of how to reframe the story, develop it a little bit like plot-wise, but we're also going to be doing line edits and maybe some criticism, we'll see. So yeah, again, this is a YouTube video by a non-professional, and we're kind of doing a non-job, so just keep that in mind. Some things that we want to keep in mind, this is a late phase edit. Even though we're doing a lot of things that should be an early phase edit, this is a late phase edit. We don't have infinite time, so I think that we want to keep as much of the original writing as we can, just so that we have, you know, as little additional work for the author as possible. And also some things to keep in mind, we want to preserve the narrative voice that already exists, enhance it wherever we can, and keep in mind our audience. This is a YA high fantasy book, so it's written for a younger audience, and it's also written for an audience that is interested in the world building, and we're going to have to incorporate those aspects into the story. Okay, so if you were not here for my previous video, basically I went through the first 2 pages and made some pretty heavy line edits mostly. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I think that if you haven't seen that video, it's actually okay, because as I mentioned in the previous video, I have some structural changes that I think would really help. I didn't actually mention what those structural changes were in the last video, so I'm going to start with that. And those structural changes actually completely changed the beginning of the book specifically, so it's not necessary for you to watch all of the edits if you haven't already. I'm going to recap the first chapter for you guys in case you haven't read it. So basically what happens in the first chapter, our main character has set out to examine this artifact, which is an arch, which contradicts the historical record. I think she is some kind of historical scholar. So it's right on the border, so she has to cross into Assyrian territory in order to copy down the runic that is written on the arch. And as she is doing so, 2 guards approach, or border patrol agents approach, and they see her, and so she has to run into the woods, and That's it. That's kind of where we are, or at least that's all you have to know for where we start. So my developmental suggestion. The story starts with these 2 full pages of exposition and setting, and it's a lot for the audience to take in all at once, which means it's going to be difficult to remember, and there's no weight to it because there's no stakes yet. We don't know anything about the character. I think that we should start this chapter by focusing a little bit more on the character and the situation that she's in. I think we can put ourselves a little bit more in media res this way, starting with the action, starting with the character who is doing the action. And I think that this final sentence of the story is really strong for that, specifically this last part. So I was on the verge of rewriting its history. If we just said this at the beginning, like I was on the verge of rewriting Conviction Woods history. So this sentence is very similar to the actual first sentence we have. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods, but it has the benefit of specifying the character, telling us something about her goal and what she's doing, telling us a little bit about her, that she's someone who cares about rewriting the history of Conviction Woods and someone who has a goal that they're working towards. So I think it's similar enough to this first sentence that it won't completely change the mood that is being established, that the author clearly wants to be like the hook of the story. It's still the same hook, but it tells us something about the character and about the situation that she's in. It gives us a little bit of a sense of stake because we know from this sentence that there is something wrong with the history, or that she's intentionally spreading misinformation, but we'll find out, I'm sure, that she's not doing that. So I think that it still maintains the author's goal with that first sentence where like this is the thing that draws you into the story, the fact that the history is in need of being rewritten. But what this sentence has that the other sentence does not is that it brings us in with this main character, and so it contextualizes this problem for us. It gives us a reason to care about the main character's goal, and it tells us a little bit something about her. So that's why I think that this is a stronger place to start than where we actually start with it, which is with this unknown historical figure, presumably. I think that's starting a little bit more in medias res. So if we start with her actually copying down the runic and she is like watching the guards approach, that puts us more in the action versus starting with the paragraphs and paragraphs of description of, you know, what the arch looks like. And we can still incorporate a lot of that description just coming up more naturally as it becomes relevant. I think you could do this without completely rewriting the chapter. So this is how I think that we could do it. I have it written out for myself. So starting with this sentence, describe her trying to copy down as much from the arch as she can while she's noticing that the Border Patrol agents are approaching. Maybe they haven't seen her yet, but she knows that she has limited time. So because the Ascidian land is barren, she's not going to have a whole lot of cover. So maybe she's just to like hide behind one of the columns, I guess, of the arch. And then also maybe she sees something about the arch that is unusual. Something that is emphasized in the beginning of this book is that the writing has 2 language systems on it. It has the language from Assidious and the language from Conviction. So maybe she has to take a little bit longer writing out the Ascidian words or runes or whatever because she's less familiar with it. She's clocking that this is strange, this is something weird, and then we get that exposition naturally as it becomes relevant in the story. And so because it's so weird, she wants to linger longer, but the Border Patrol is coming closer. We're building on this sense of tension as the scene's playing out. Eventually she has to back up a little bit to see what's written on the very top of the arch above her head, and that means she has to step out into the open, and then she has to run into the woods for cover. The woman guard pursues her, as happens in the actual chapter, and then we're pretty much back where the chapter is, playing out exactly as the chapter does. So it would really only be the first 2.5 pages that I'm changing here, and the rest of the chapter could just play out as normal. And really the only thing that I would want to do with that is just restructure. It would require additional writing, like you would have to write out the descriptions of her, you know, copying the runes, thinking about the runes, trying to place the arch in history. So maybe she sees something on the arch that helps her date it, because that's also something she does in the beginning of the chapter. She's able to tell what war this arch was erected in. So maybe she sees something and she's like, oh, this verb form was only used at this time period, so that means that it has to be this. Or maybe there's a mention of a name that is significant in the historical record, something like that, that she's able to date it. And so she's not just like approaching this arch and describing it to us for 2 pages, she's working through it as we, the audience, are becoming familiar with the world, and everything that is relevant to her research we're also learning with her. She does go into this scene with some knowledge of the arch, so maybe she can work that in too, because she says like she has been reading up on this, she saw it mentioned in one of the historical documents, and so maybe she'll say like, oh, this is what I read about in this, and like this is how it looks. Like she can compare it to what she's read versus the actual thing. I think that we can work through that I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I think that we can work through it a lot more naturally if we're able to see her actually like experiencing and interpreting everything that she's seeing, rather than getting this kind of narrative voice working us through the world building and the exposition, rather that like this is coming up as it becomes relevant to the character. 2 things that are brought up in the second chapter that could be brought up here are that conviction is like in this perpetual summer, and that the main character, Rika, which is her name that we also learn in the second chapter, is able to like shapeshift clothing. She's able to shapeshift like object, not herself, but like materials. So she's able to shapeshift fabric, and the land that she's in is very cold. Assidius is very cold. We have descriptions of the arch returning to the snow. So maybe like as she is writing, her fingers are really cold, she's unused to the temperature, and she has to shapeshift her clothes to make herself warmer. That could be a way of integrating that magic system a little bit earlier, and then also making us a bit familiar with the world. We know that there are harsh climate changes between these 2 lands. That's just a suggestion. I think that that could be pretty cool, a way of integrating that exposition into the actual scene. Also, it's just I never really got that. She does say that there's snow on the arch, but I wasn't really feeling the sense of cold in this chapter. So I think as if, especially if this character is from a place that is never cold and that is always summer and humid, I think that that would be maybe something significant. It could tell us a little bit about the world, tell us a little bit about the character and her experiences. I think that that could be helpful for us, if we make that also another source of tension, as like her fingers are really cold as she's trying to copy it down, and so she's a little bit stiff. Something that bothered me about the first 2 pages is that the border patrol officers see her and come over, but then they have this whole dialogue exchange where they're like, did you see her? And we've gotten this whole description of the land as barren and apparently snowy, and she's wearing red. That's like the most obvious thing that you could see in the snow is red, and they're like, oh, where did she go in this barren land? Supposedly there's nothing there. How did you not see her? And then we can avoid that, because maybe she spots the guards first, hides behind the arch a little bit, but then has to step out into the open in order to finish her work. And then they run up to her and she runs away, and we get this kind of culmination of that tension. I think it could be a solid way to start the chapter. You can let me know if you would restructure it in a different way, or if you have a different suggestion, but that's just kind of my initial understanding. That's kind of what I would do, what I would say as a development editor, as a suggestion, just as a possible way that this scene could go. That would be like the first couple pages. So we really just have to start our edit from like here, I think. You're sure she went in there? The Taurus asked again. Oh, so the guards, there's one Taurus and there's one Virgo. The Taurus is a dude and the Virgo is a woman. I don't know anything about astrology, so I assume, based on the second chapter, that all of the people in this world have personalities based on their zodiac sign. I do not know if it is accurate, because I don't know anything about the astrology signs. So if you are into that, and if you can tell us if this is a good representation of the zodiac signs, that would be appreciated, but that is outside of my realm of expertise. You sure she went in there? The Taurus asked again. Yes, she rolled her eyes. where else do you suppose she disappeared to? This part again, if it were my suggestion, I would say that we remove this. I think it doesn't really make sense that they didn't see where she went. So I think that we should just get rid of this, because I mean you've gone out of your way to describe it as barren and like empty and flat. We actually have some art to show it. So we see like this is the woods where she came from. There's a beast right there. We'll get to him. Here's the little arch, and there's like barren land in front of her with no trees or covering of any kind. So it just doesn't make sense to me that they wouldn't have seen her. And I think that kind of regardless of whether or not the initial suggestion of restructuring the scene is taken, I think that we should delete these lines because they just don't really make sense to me. The two of them stood in front of the woods, curiously staring at what they saw as a forest empty of occupants. I wasn't visible past the aura that shielded and hid any entity who could survive beyond the boundaries. Okay, so there's like a warding aura that keeps people out, but also well, it doesn't seem to keep people out. There's like a warding aura that makes it look as if the woods are uninhabitable to a person from the outside. So again, this is something that I talked about in the first video, this like of structure that she uses pretty often. My professor talked about in one of my poetry classes, is this kind of way of making the of emphatic because you're putting the thing that is of in this position of significance. At the end of the sentence, it's getting a lot of emphasis there, and you're using the of as an intensifier. And so sometimes that's too much, and it just kind of makes this, and it's been used pretty frequently also, so it's a little bit redundant. And this just isn't actually something that is that emphatic. It's not something that really needs to be that emphasized because we know that they think the woods are uninhabitable. So, although I guess if we were going with my original suggestion of restructuring the scene, maybe this is the first time that we're learning that. So let's pretend that that's the case, and this is the first time that we're realizing that the woods presents itself as being uninhabitable. So the two of them stood in front of the woods, curiously staring at what they saw as an empty forest. I think that works better here. Maybe it is the case that she wants to emphasize the occupants, but I think that occupants may be not the best word. I kind of assume that they know animals can survive in the forest, and that they assume people can't, and like that's why they don't go into the woods, because they do in a second talk about the beasts that live in the forest. So they know it has occupants, it has something in there. So maybe empty of humans if you wanted to keep that part. But also, I don't know why you would look into the forest and be like, oh, it's empty, when there are so many places that you can hide in a forest. Like, this girl could just be behind a tree. I wasn't visible past the aura that shielded and hid any entity who could survive beyond the boundaries. I think that this sentence, I like all the content of this sentence, but I think that it can be rearranged a little bit to be a little bit clearer. I think I called it a protective aura earlier because she called it an aura of protection, and I changed it to protective aura. The protective aura shielded and hid any entity who could survive. Because we learn in the next chapter that not everybody is capable of surviving in the forest, and that only our main character Rika and like her family are some of the only people who are able to. So I think that we can keep most of this. Like, the protective aura shielded and hid any entity who could survive, maybe like with the ability instead of who could, because I feel like that places more emphasis on the fact that it is like it's an ability with the power, even with the ability to survive beyond its boundaries. I think that, yeah, so I mean I've kept all of the words of the original sentence and just kind of changed the order a little bit. I think it flows a little bit better, but you can let me know what you think. The protective aura shielded and hid any entity with the ability to survive beyond its boundaries. And then I think we can maybe add something for the sake of like the narrator voice, maybe like I was invisible or something. I was invisible to them, something like that, just to kind of I don't know, bring back this idea that she's not visible. But also, I mean, it says it is shielded and hid. The protective aura shielded and hid any entity with the ability to survive beyond its boundaries. I was invisible to them. It's a little bit redundant what I've done here with the I was invisible to them. You can even do like thanks to the protective aura. I feel like this would be leaning really heavily into the narrator voice and kind of making the sentence a little bit clunkier, but you can let me know what you think. Thanks to the protective aura that shielded and hid any entity with the ability to survive beyond its boundaries, I was invisible to them. I don't know if I like that. I think that maybe I don't like that. Maybe I do, but I don't know. The protective aura, yeah, I think I want to leave it like that for now. Yeah, I could if I were offering suggestions to the author, I could give her both and say if she liked either of them, but she wouldn't survive, he repeated. Well, because we're operating with the assumption now that he did see her go in, he can just say she won't survive. The Virgo crossed her arms. I still think they made that up. It up. Who? What? He raised his brows. Who made what up? The conviction stellarium. They made up the whole conviction woods is deadly thing to keep us out. Have you ever talked to someone who has actually seen a beast? I don't know, because I think that we've, at least the way that the chapter is laid out by the author, it seems like pretty concretely established in this world that everybody believes the woods are uninhabitable and that you cannot survive within them. So for the fact of this like random guard to be like, oh, I think it's a lie, I'm not really sure that that undercuts it, but obviously, like, I mean, it's in the first chapter, so the author must assume like a certain level of skepticism within the world, that they're like not completely sure if conviction is being truthful. I just don't really know about this whole exchange. Um, I think that maybe it would be stronger if instead of being like, oh, I think that it's not true, maybe if she's just like, oh, I wouldn't go in anyway. That's something that I think is like a world building question, is like, do people have a healthy skepticism of the conviction woods is deadly thing, or like how ingrained is that into society? Because it seemed to me, based on the description that she gave us, which again, like, I would suggest is changed, so it maybe doesn't even matter, but it seemed to me like that was pretty strongly rooted. It is just like, when I first read it, I was like, it's a little bit comical for them to be like, oh, she's in the deadly woods. I think the deadly woods are fake. Like, that just kind of read a little bit unserious to me. So, but okay, I think that I've pinpointed my frustration with this scene. It's going to be in the next two dialogues, so I'll read those out to you. No, and that's because they don't survive when they see one. He shivered and took a step back. I say we leave it. She's gone. We can hang out here for a bit in case she comes back. They trained us to stay out of Conviction Woods, but they never told us why. The Border Patrol trainers mentioned nothing about what the woods are like. All they said is that they're dangerous. Like, girl, you just told me that there's beasts who live in there, who eat people. You've just told me that there's beasts in there. So I think they did tell you why you can't go in there. There's beasts in there. Yeah, I think that maybe this scene would read a little bit better if she was like, I think I want to go in anyway. I don't care if there's a beast. But also, here's my question, is that she's now in Conviction Woods, so I'm pretty sure she's outside of their jurisdiction. I don't know if they're allowed to cross over the border and go get her and bring her back into their territory if she's like already gone back into her territory. Maybe they're corrupt border patrol. Who could ever imagine that? Have you ever talked to someone who's actually seen a beast? No, and that's because they don't survive when they see one. I think that's good. He shivered and took a step back. I say we leave it. She's gone. We can hang out here for a bit in case she comes back. Hang out? I don't know what the vibe is on using like colloquialisms and slang in this fantasy world. So if we wanted to avoid that, which I think a lot of fantasy books do, not all of them, we could say like we can wait here for a little bit. They trained us to stay out of Conviction Woods, but they never told us why. girl, they did tell you why, because there's beasts in there. Yeah, this whole thing just like it needs to be changed because this is just like factually not what happened. I don't know what to change it to because I don't know what the truth is of this world, because I don't know what is going on, but like they obviously did tell you why you can't go in there, because there's beasts in there that eat people, and that's why you can't go in. So this just needs to be changed to something else. And also, I would assume that you were trained not to go into Conviction Woods because it is not your territory, right? You're the border patrol watching the border. I assume you're not supposed to go over the border. Like I assume there's Conviction Border Patrol that keeps you from going into their border. So why isn't that an obstacle? Maybe that's why we can change this. Maybe she wants to go in despite there potentially being beasts in the woods. And she's like, oh, they're probably fine, whatever. Then the Taurus can be like, no, no, there's going to be a beast and it's illegal. Maybe Taurus is our rule followers. I don't know if that is true because I don't know anything about the zodiac signs, but maybe that is true. And if not, then he can have a different character trait. Maybe something like that. But yeah, I mean, this doesn't make sense, and I don't know what to replace it with because I don't know what the truth is in this situation. Yeah, it isn't worth it for a raise. It's one girl. Even if we catch her, we probably won't get much for it. Not if she's a Scorpio. Her capture would cover us for months. Her determined eyes were set on the space where I stood. I didn't hear any screams we would have heard if she was attacked. I feel like the sense of tension is kind of diffused. So, and also there like kind of wasn't a sense of tension anyway because she just walked calmly into the woods, and they don't even fully know if she was there at all. So I think that maybe if upon rewrite, I think this would be a place to add in some tension. Maybe she's like standing really close to the edge of the aura and she like is trying to walk back slowly without, I don't know, stepping on a twig like a cartoon character, something like that. She's like trying to get away without causing a lot of noise, or she's trying to just like wait and see if they'll leave. Maybe even like from in the woods, she's trying to like still sketch out the arch or something, or like going through her notes and like trying to still piece together as much as she can, because it feels very much like we've taken kind of a break in this scene to have them exchange their dialogue. Like if this was a movie, it would be like a cutaway to these two characters, and so I think we need to cut back to the main character and see like what is she doing in this, because I don't know where she is in space. I don't know if she has gone and like actually hid, or if she is just like standing out in the open. I don't know if she is worried about them coming in, or like as they're talking about whether or not they want to go into the woods, whether she feels any kind of panic of like, oh, what if she does come in, if she like has any kind of reaction to this. I think we need to get the main character's reaction here. So that's something that I would add to this scene. This is absurd. I am not going in there. The Taurus took another step back. No way. Absolutely not. Even they won't go in there. Good luck. You're on your own. You're a coward. I won't go far. They, as in convictionists. I think that this should be moved here. The like they is in convictionist, because by the time I read this second line of dialogue, that you're a coward, I wasn't, the subject kind of got lost because she changed who the subject was. Let's move that here so that we kind of retain who the they is. They as in convictionist. The guy wasn't wrong. No, I don't, the guy, that's kind of throwing me off. Maybe the officer or just like the Taurus again. I just feel like calling him the guy just like is, I don't know. I also feel like guy, it feels kind of modern. It feels kind of colloquial, and I don't know if that's what we want. The Taurus wasn't wrong. Normally, the Woods didn't make exceptions for anyone, regardless of union, despite being part of Conviction's territory. I think this is good, actually. I think because it tells us that the Woods are also off limits to the Convictionists, which we didn't know earlier, and that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. We have to add this paragraph goes with the one before it. So I don't think it needs to be two paragraphs. It's already a relatively short paragraph, and they go together. So I think it's fine to have them just be one paragraph. It being two paragraphs gives it a bit more emphasis. So you can go either way. We can leave it as two if, because that's what the author wanted originally. My family was proof there were exceptions, somehow, some way, and I would find out why. I don't think we need this comma. What's going on with this? But my family was proof that there were exceptions somehow, some way, and I would find out why. I don't know if I like the somehow, some way, honestly. Something about it's just a little, I don't know that it's not grammatically wrong, but I think that the was and then the were, something about it, it just like it isn't reading quite as smoothly as it could. And I think that maybe this works a little bit better. But my family was proof that exceptions existed. Let me know what you think about that versus, but my family was proof that there were exceptions. They're both grammatically correct. I just think that this one flows a little bit smoother. Yeah, we can keep this somehow, some way. Yeah, it's cute. I like it. I stepped farther back into the woods, ducking behind the trunk of a massive pine. I stepped farther back into the woods, ducking behind the trunk of a massive pine. Its deep sepia bark shimmered gold when my hand fell atop its body. Sunlight filtered in green from the reflection of pine needles above, the forest floor covered in moss and shed cones from the hemlocks. Moisture clung to my skin with the humidity of the temperate rainforest. Okay, so again, she's from the temperate rainforest. She was just in the snow. I feel like this would have been a good opportunity to give us a little bit of like both the sense of tension of like, oh, she's in this unfamiliar environment and that's affecting her physically. And we can show her magic powers, which are this like transmutation of fabric, where she has to like use her powers to make her clothes warmer, and like that can also be a source of tension because now she's having to divide her focus between the fact that she's cold and she needs to use her magic versus like she has to also copy this down while the guards are coming, so we can really like pack on that tension as the scene is going on in the beginning of this chapter. Yeah, I think the first sentence is good. I have noticed just going through this that this is a sentence structure that is used a lot, so that like subject verb comma verb ing da 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 is just a sentence structure that comes up a lot, so I would encourage her to kind of vary that. I don't know if I like the word body for the tree. I know that she's probably just trying to avoid using the word trunk again, but the body of a tree. I don't know, because my hand fell atop its body. It's not a passive verb, but it has this kind of passive sense where like the hand just kind of happens to stumble across the top of the tree. But is she touching the tree or does she just happen to touch it? Also, the fell atop, I doubt that she is falling atop the tree. I doubt that it's falling atop of the body of the tree. My hand like trailed along the bark. We could switch the order of this and just say, when my hand trailed along the bark, it the deep sepia bark, it shimmered gold. And I think that that would give us a little bit of that variability in sentence structure. And I just don't like fell atop because I don't think that she's atop. I know she means just like a top like that, but and I don't like body. I don't like body for the tree. So I think that this works a little bit better. When my hand trailed along the deep sepia bark, it shimmered gold. Then I guess it's a little confusing if she means the hand shimmered gold or the bark shimmered gold. So she could say, my hand trailed, which shimmered gold. Sunlight filtered in green from the reflection of pine needles above, the forest floor covered in moss and shed cones from the hemlocks. Sunlight filtered in green. I think maybe sunlight filtered green. Sunlight tinted green. Because I understand when I read it out loud, I kind of know what she's saying. Like the sunlight is filtering in green, but I think that it doesn't read quite perfectly. So maybe like sunlight tinted green from the reflection. Something about that isn't quite working for me. sunlight tinted green from the reflection of the pine needles above. Another of intensifier. I think that we could switch this to be the pine needles possessive reflection, and because we've got a lot of prepositions here, and so I think that kind of reducing that might make the sentence flow a little bit better. Let's say, sunlight tinted green from the pine needles reflection above. The forest floor covered in moss and shed cones from the hemlocks. Another kind of sentence structure like this, same kind of construction, not exactly. The subject, verb, and then another description added onto the end with a comma. Yeah, so like this part is a description, but it's also just kind of tacked onto the end of a sentence, and it's just not quite working for me. So I think a suggestion for just how we could change this part, like, and the forest floor, let's say, actually we can change this around too. Moss and shed cones from the hemlocks covered the forest floor. I just don't know if it's necessary to have the from the hemlocks, because I mean, I know where pine cones come from, so I feel like you could just do that. And so then the way that we could do the sentence is sunlight tinted green from the pine needles reflection above, and moss and shed cones covered the forest floor. Moisture clung to my skin with the humidity of the temperate forest. Another of intensifier. So of the temperate rainforest. I also wonder about using the word woods and rainforest, because they do evoke different senses and different climates. Rainforest has a very different climate than woods, and so I'm wondering if it is actually a rainforest. It doesn't appear to be. I wonder if rainforest is the word that we want here. It could just say temperate forest. So it doesn't appear to be a tropical rainforest, you know? I think that, again, this isn't another of intensifier. We're putting this for the temperate forest in this place of significance in the sentence and having it intensified by the of. I think that we can just do in the forest's humidity, because humidity, I assume that it is temperate, you know? Moisture clung to my skin from the forest's humidity. I think that works better. Or even the forest, oops, it's not a proper noun. Humidity. Can humidity cling to skin? I think it can, as someone who is from a humid place. Moisture from the forest humidity clung to my skin. Behind a nearby pine, a wolf laid idle, basking in a patch of cozy moss. Its nose twitched when it caught my scent, looking up to ensure I was familiar. So again, we have the sentence structure of, you know, subject, verb, ing, da 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 da. So it's not really a problem. It's still like it's a fine sentence structure. It's just used a lot. So we want to make sure that it's not used all the time. Once I was approved, it rested its head back down on its paws, turning over on its side to warm its belly in the sunlight. I too enjoyed the peaceful hush of the woods, the company of the unbothered creatures acquainted to my presence. I think that you could just say bask. Oops. A wolf basked in a patch of cozy moss. Because basked already has the connotation of laying idle, so it's a little bit repetitive to introduce this idea twice. It's not wrong the way that she has it, but again, it is also this sentence structure of subject, verb, ing, da 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 da. So we maybe want to reduce that as much as we can, just because it's coming up pretty frequently. Behind a nearby pine, a wolf basked in a patch of cozy moss. I think it's got like a little, we're supposedly in this like kind of tense situation too, because like the woman is going to come into the woods and try to attack her. So I think that we should kind of keep the sentence structure to be representative of that. Its nose twitched when it caught my scent, looking up to ensure I was familiar. So now we can leave that sentence like that, because the sentence before it, we changed the sentence structure, so it's not that repetitive in that parallel structure. Once I was approved, this is, first of all, passive, and I think that it flows better to be like, once the wolf approved. Once the wolf approved of me, it rested its head back on its paws. That's very cute. But then again, we have this again. So every sentence in this paragraph so far has had this structure of subject, verb, comma, verb, ing, da da da, because here we have once a wolf approved of me, it rested its head back down on its paws, comma, turning over. So again, we have that same structure. So that's why we had to change it in the first one. I am justifying my choice here. If we wanted to change up the structure here again, we can just say like and turned. And then we still break up the continuous use of that structure. I too enjoy the peaceful hush of the woods, the company of unbothered creatures acquainted to my presence. What does Google have to say about this? Yeah, but to anyone else, just to kind of unite these ideas a little bit closer, both grammatically and just like conceptually, because it seems like they are playing off of each other, but being separated in different paragraphs and not having any kind of conjunction or like any kind of joining force with them, that's not quite so obvious. But to anyone else, the woods were a living hell amidst the land of Guardian. I don't know that we need amidst the land of Guardian. I think that maybe she's bringing it up here because maybe this is the first time it's being mentioned in the story, so we want to introduce the name of the land that we're in. But I feel like we don't need to, because I mean the story, the series is called like the Land of Guardian or whatever. So I mean the reader is gonna have that like fourth wall knowledge going into the story that this is taking place in the Land of Guardian. So it's not quite as like, I think that you can kind of leverage that to your advantage and not have to exposit that to the reader while they're reading it, because they already know. And you know that they already know, but even if it hasn't been described in the story, you already know that they know. And like amidst the land of Guardian, what do you mean? Is there a different living hell not amidst the land of Guardian? Is the rest of Guardian known to be extremely paradise-like, so that this would be very hell-like in comparison? Also, I should mention the word hell obviously has a, you know, real world religious connotation. So does the concept of hell exist in this world? Is this what you call like what does it mean in this concept, in this context? It's a world building question. So maybe you know they have the same exact concept of hell. I mean, in Game of Thrones, they also have a concept of hell. It's a different hell, but they still call it that, at least in the TV show. I don't remember if they say it in the books. So, I mean, it's possible that they just have the word hell, and then I wouldn't have anything to say about it. But it is a question that I would have for the author to clarify, and see whether or not we wanted to maybe change this. The woman took a step beyond the lanterns, breaking through the aurora boundary. But again, we're having this you know, subject, verb, comma, verb, ing, da 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 da. So it's a sentence structure that's coming up a lot. So we do want to avoid it where we can. The woman took a step beyond the lanterns, breaking through the aurora boundary. I kind of like this sentence though, so I do want to leave it, but it is just something to clock. And maybe even just like as a writer moving forward for her to keep in mind, is like, okay, I fall back on this sentence structure a lot, I should vary it up. Breaking through the aurora boundary, I think we need a description of what that means, because, and I know we have a lot of description and a lot of exposition, but I feel like the exposition that we have is maybe not the things that are relevant. So whenever someone breaks through the boundary of the woods, what does that look like? Is there a physical reaction or a visible change in the aura that happens whenever someone breaks through? Is it difficult to break through? Because it seems like she just kind of walks through. But so like, what does that mean? And this is world building that is important in this moment. So that's the world building that we should have right now. What does it mean to break through the aura? Can anybody do it? Do you have to exert any kind of effort? Is it a magical effort? Is it a physical strength effort? What does it look like? That kind of thing. My eyes with a smile, her hand resting on a belt as she unsheathed a dagger. So again, we have the sentence structure, subject, verb. We have a new subject and an ing verb here. So yeah, she met my eyes with a smile. Okay, so I feel like we also need a description of her spotting our main character, because she's like hiding behind a tree, right? Ducking behind a tree. Yeah, how did you see her so fast? So again, additional description. Her hand resting on a belt as she unsheathed her dagger. I don't think her hand is resting on the belt. I think that her hand is going to the dagger that is on the belt, so it wouldn't be resting on the belt, is what I mean. She met my eyes with a smile as she unsheathed her dagger. Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think that's actually some very good work on my part. I'm proud of that suggestion. She met my eyes with a smile as she unsheathed her dagger. Beautiful. My fingers traced over the half-moon necklace resting on my cloak, above my cloak, sorry. Why does she have a cloak if she's from this temperate forest? Did she have to make it in order to go to Assidius so that she could go into the snow? These are some of their world-building questions that can be answered in this chapter that would be relevant to this chapter, instead of kind of the exposition that we're getting that is not yet relevant. Like, so earlier we got a little bit of exposition about like the historical record, like the what the different unions are, that kind of thing, the capital city, the central city. But this is important to right now, and it would be easy to integrate that because it's relevant to the plot. It would be easier for the audience to remember because it's relevant to the plot and the characters, and this is where you need to integrate that world building, that exposition. So my fingers traced over the half-moon necklace resting above my cloak. I snapped it off and shook the necklace, causing it to transform in its transformation spell to activate. Again, we have the same sentence structure, subject, verb, comma, ing verb. With a flash of pale blue light, it shifted to a short broadsword. Its deep ebony metal flared in the sunlight as I faced it towards her, grasping the red and gold handle. Same sentence structure. Subject, verb, comma, ing verb. So it's just something we should vary up. Let's see. My fingers traced over the half-moon necklace. Half-moon? I was expecting a crescent moon. I don't know why that surprised me so badly. I snapped it off and shook the necklace, causing its transformation spell to activate. I think that this kind of also gives it a passive sense. She causes the transformation spell to activate. I think that she should activate the transformation spell, just like that shift in the verbiage, I think would really give her a more sense of agency in this moment. Just to change it, using the same words that she has, but changing the order. Activated the transformation spell by shaking the necklace. By shaking it. We don't need necklace again. No, it's not giving, you know? You could even, you know what, kind of take that sentence structure that she likes and just reverse it, and then I think that this actually works really well. So snapping it off, I activated the transformation spell by shaking it. They could just say, I activated the transformation spell. Activated its transformation spell. Snapping it off my neck. Off the chain. Yeah, I like that. Okay. My fingers traced over the half-moon necklace resting above my cloak. Snapping the chain, I activated its transformation spell. I think that really works. With a flash of pale blue light, it shifted into a short broadsword. Good. Its deep ebony metal flared in the sunlight as I faced it toward her, grasping the red and gold handle. I really like flared. Its deep ebony metal flared in the sunlight. I think that's really strong. Hear me out. This is taking a little bit of liberties, getting a little bit creative with it. With a flash of pale blue light, it shifted into the hilt of the red and gold hilt of a short broadsword. And yes, I have used the of intensifier here. I think it works because it's a sword, and so that is like emphatic. But you could change the order of this again to get rid of that of intensifier. I would not be mad at you if that was a suggestion that you had. Let's see where the paragraph is in this state. My fingers traced over the half-moon necklace resting above my cloak. Snapping the chain, I activated its transformation spell. With a flash of pale blue light, it shifted into the red and gold hilt of a short broadsword. So what I've done here, taking the words from the very end of this paragraph and moving them up, just to kind of show, like, I assume that the part of the necklace that she's holding becomes the part of the sword that she's holding. So making that connection there a little bit, like playing on that connection, also integrating the description of the sword. I think it works. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's not clear what's happening. But I think it is. Her eyes darted around, observing the tranquil forest around her. So it was all a lie. I think that she has no sense of danger in this, and maybe she's not afraid of this girl who's got a fucking magic sword in front of her, but that seems a little bit bizarre to me, even though she is a young and inexperienced Border Patrol agent. It seems like maybe she'd be like, now is not the time to observe the forest and uh, just chat with this girl. Her eyes dart, see, like eyes darting around does create that sense of um, shock, of surprise. She's taking in potentially the threat around her, but then observing, again, kind of a slower verb. You observe things slow, and we have the same sentence structure again: subject, verb, comma, ing verb. So maybe you could say like, as she took in, I don't think we need around. Her eyes darted as she took in the tranquil forest around her. Yeah, also we had around twice in that sentence, so we don't want that. Her eyes darted as she took in the tranquil forest around her. Maybe in this case, like, I don't mind that there's no dialogue tag, but I feel like in this case, maybe we do want a description of her voice, because what is her emotion as she's reacting to this? Is she, well, we have bewilderment down here, but that is over something else. So is she surprised? Does she feel vindicated? I smiled, and she shook her head in bewilderment at the expressed emotion of a Scorpio. Yeah, so we learned in the second chapter that all of the zodiac signs have these codes. I think I'll talk about them at the end. And so the Scorpios are not supposed to share or like express emotion. So she's breaking her code right now. I wasn't concerned. She'd never dare talk about what the woods were about to unleash upon her, let alone try to return. I think that's good. I waved at her. Good luck. Hope you can run fast. Sunlight waned. Shadows crept along the trees and tendrils and swallowed the golden hues. Ooh, I like swallowed the golden hues. A sharp wind hushed the birdsong, brushing along my shoulders. There's that sentence structure again. The inviting greens contorted, vines swallowing the forest floor in a sea of mossy sludge, same sentence structure, while the fog curled around the trunks. Shadows crept along the trees and tendrils. I like this description, actually. And swallowed the golden hues. I really like that. A sharp wind hushed the bird song, brushing along my shoulders. Here's the thing. I think that a sharp wind doesn't brush. And I think that if we just have this sentence like, a sharp wind hushed the bird song, I think that that works. I think that works well. And these like shorter sentences are conveying the sense of tension, the sense that something bad is happening. And I think that that works well. So I think that also, just to avoid the sentence structure that we've been using, just cutting this out entirely. The inviting greens contorted, and then I think we just say like, and vines swallowed the forest floor in a sea of mossy sludge, while a fog curled around the trunks. I really like that. I think that paragraph is pretty solid. The wolf stood as a shadow seeped into its body. Its yellow eyes blinked scarlet, a stare that was said to slice your soul in half, devouring you from the metaphysical before the physical. It stalked past me. The vines on the forest floor didn't tie themselves around my ankles. The shadows avoided my skin. The wolf stood as a shadow seeped into its body. Very scary. I like that. This is a tough one because we have the physical color of the eyes changing, but we also have the like seeming possession of the wolf by some kind of shadow creature. And that the stare resulting from the scarlet eyes has these magical qualities about it. But I think that the way it's conveyed in this sentence doesn't quite make sense. I don't know. I just think that the shift from the physical color of the eyes to the like quality of the stare is a little bit unclear when it's just separated by a comma. So I think we need some kind of harsher divide between that. and I'm not totally sure that this is it. I think that this still needs a little bit of workshopping, but I think we're getting there. Devouring you from the metaphysical before the physical. I like that, but I want to change up the sentence structure. Was said to slice your soul in half and devour you from the metaphysical to the physical. Yeah, I think that the two has to be here, from the metaphysical to the physical. If you wanted the before, you could say devoured you metaphysically before physically. But because she has this from here, I think the two works better. The vines on the floor didn't tie themselves around my ankles. The shadows avoided my skin. Okay, yeah, so this is good because we're getting the sense of what the woods actually have, what actually is their magical quality, why nobody else can live in the woods. Blood oozed from the beast's maw. I really like oozed and maw. I think those are really vivid words. Blood oozed from the beast's maw when it unleashed a hungry snarl, its body reeking of putrid, rotting limbs. Ew. Panic flooded over the woman's face, and she looked to me with wide eyes as if I could do anything about it. So again, we start off with that same sentence structure. Why does the beast already have blood in its maw? Is my question, because it was just lounging a second ago. But I like it visually. I do really like it visually. I think that you could maybe change it around just to avoid this sentence structure again. So body reeking of putrid, rotting limbs. The beast unleashed a hungry snarl. But then we have to lose the blood oozed. But the thing is that, like, I don't think it has blood in its maw yet, so I don't know why it already has blood in its maw, because it doesn't seem like it's been eating anything yet. Maybe it's the beast's own blood. How can I work this in? How do we feel about that? I think it's a little bit, I don't know. Body reeking of putrid, rotting limbs, the beast unleashed a hungry snarl through a maw oozing with blood. It's still a little bit clunky. I don't know. The beast unleashed. That's kind of hard to say. The beast unleashed a hungry snarl through a maw oozing with blood. Is it hungry? Or is it mean? Because, I mean, it's one thing, I'm getting the sense that the beast will eat her, but is that out of hunger, or is that out of, like, territorialism? I would wonder if we could say a territorial snarl or a vicious snarl. I already have the sense that it's going to be eating her. That was communicated effectively. So I wonder if maybe that is more in line with what we want to say. Let's see which sentence we like better. Blood oozed from the beast's maw when it unleashed a hungry snarl, its body reeking of putrid, rotting limbs. Body reeking of putrid, rotting limbs, the beast unleashed a vicious snarl through a maw oozing with blood. I think we're getting close. I think this is not my final suggestion, but I think we're getting close to it. We could say the beast viciously snarled, and that would kind of get rid of this unleashed, but I kind of like unleash. I think that also a problem that I have with this first sentence is the, like, when. Even if you just said, like, as, I think that's better. Yeah, I like as. Blood oozed from the beast's maw as it unleashed a hungry snarl, its body reeking with putrid, rotting limbs. Body reeking of putrid, rotting limbs, the beast unleashed a vicious snarl through a mouth. I keep saying mouth, a maw oozing with blood. Panic flooded over the woman's face, and she looked to me with wide eyes, as if I could do anything about it. I like that. I like that she's like, not my problem. If I were you, I said, shaking my sword to reverse it back to my pendant. So again, we have subject, verb, comma, ing. Just say, like, as I shook. I said, as I shook my sword to reverse it back to my pendant. I think it's a little bit funny that she pulled out the sword. The woman didn't give a fuck, and she's already changing it back. But I like the magic sword. In any other circumstance, she would have disregarded Scorpio's warning. Some part of me found satisfaction in seeing the Ascidians listen to my instruction when they stepped beyond the boundaries of the woods. Okay, so this has happened before. I think this paragraph is good, but it is implying that like this has happened to her a couple times before, so maybe that could inform her reaction as she's waiting to see whether or not the Border Patrol agent is going to cross the border. Maybe she's like kind of excited to see, instead of a sense of like scary tension, maybe we can instead have this sense of like, oh, I kind of hope that she crosses the border because like I think it's funny in like a dark, twisted way, and then because she's so edgy. That would also like that would introduce the idea that this is not something new for her, and kind of tell us a little bit about her, about the fact that she's been to this border before, seemingly frequently, and does this often, which is not the sense that I got from the beginning. And then that would also add to our understanding of her character. It would give us an introduction to her personality a little bit earlier, and so we would have that kind of connection to her a little bit earlier. I merely missed as she broke through the aura and slammed against the dirt of the east trail. The beast didn't follow her out, instead watching her with its piercing red eyes in case she crossed back over. For a few moments, both remained in a standstill, until the forest recognized the departure of its threat. The shadows sunk into the ground, golden hues washing over the trees in a glimmering wave. See, what's interesting is that I think this author's writing gets a lot better once the action starts to get going. Like, I feel like I don't have as many critiques for this section of the story as I did for the beginning. And I think that it's flowing a lot easier. So like, and I think that is also another like merit to starting more in media res, starting with more of the action and like the actual act of the character drawing out the runes, talking about the world building kind of only as it becomes relevant, because it seems like the author is a little bit snappier, or a little bit just like has a better flow once that action actually gets started. And it is the like kind of shoehorned exposition part that is actually the part that is suffering the most, in terms of writing and in terms of just like bogging down the content. Maybe I'm just missing like what the significance of the lanterns is here. I know that there are lanterns like at the border, but it seems like what she's trying to, she wants to go past the lanterns, she's not scrambling to the lanterns. So maybe she's to say like and past the lanterns as the creature leapt forward, snapping at her leg. Again, we have this sentence structure repeated. I feel like I've changed it enough times previously that we can let this one slide. It merely missed. I think that narrowly works better here. I know what she means by it merely missed, but I think that narrowly just has the connotation that we're looking for here. It narrowly missed as she broke through the aura and slammed against the dirt of the east trail. Again with this of intensifier, slammed against the east trail, I think works. Or just slammed against the dirt on the other side, something like that. Yeah, on the other side. Because also, like, we've talked about the east trail. We know where it is. The shadows sunk into the ground, golden hues washing over. Same sentence structure. Because I kept it in the first sentence, I'm going to change it here. And washed. And you can do the opposite. You can change it in the first sentence and leave it here if the author so wanted. Black fog melded, or almost at the end. The black fog it's only been 2 hours. The black fog melted off the wolf. It glanced back in my direction, and after determining the woods were clear of intruders, it trotted over to me. I knelt and stroked it between the ears as it curiously gave me a sniff inspection. Sorry, that caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting a word like that. It wagged its tail before it returned to the bed of moss, flopping back over. Same sentence structure. I must have been approved again. The black fog melted off the wolf. I think maybe from the wolf. Melted from the wolf? It glanced back at my direction, in my direction, and after determining that the woods were clear of intruders, it trotted over to me. Very cute. I like that. I knelt and stroked between its ears, as it curiously gave me a sniffspection. I love sniffspection, it's adorable. It wagged its tail before it returned. I'm gonna returning. Give her an ing where I've been deleting them all. And then it's really and then it's really easy to change up the sentence structure here because it actually flows very well. It wagged its tail before returning to the bed of moss and flopping back over. Beyond the boundary, the Taurus was screaming at his colleague. Her dagger had been thrown aside. She sobbed, begging, same sentence structure, him to believe what she'd seen. I don't know why he wouldn't. He's the one who brought up the beast in the first place. Beyond the boundary, the Taurus was screaming at his colleague. Yeah, her dagger had been thrown aside. Good, I like that short sentence after that kind of longer sentence. She sobbed, begging him to believe what she'd seen. I mean, the sentence structure works here, and did I have it in the previous paragraph? I think that this is the last time that we had it, so I think it's been long enough we can have it again. With a satisfied, guilty smile, I turned away from the east trail, walking deeper into the woods. Same sentence structure, and now they're one sentence apart, so we're gonna have to change one of them. There was no use in letting the day waste by attempting to wait for the Ascidians to recover. The wolf, catching my movement, pricked its ears and bounded after me to guide me home. The forest understood how to defend me, and I was on the verge of rewriting its history. Okay, chapter 1. With a satisfied, I'm wondering if these are the right words that we want here, because I don't really get the sense that she does feel guilty. I don't know why the East Trail is such a significant name that it has to be repeated so many times in this. Just say, like, I began walking deeper into the woods. I don't think we need to mention the East Trail again unless it's going to be some kind of, like, major geographic signifier. I don't really think we need to bring it up by name so often. Maybe East Trail just isn't feeling like it's gonna be a significant like factor because it's just kind of a generic name. I began walking deeper into the woods. There was no use in letting the day waste by attempting to wait for the Ascidians to recover. I feel like letting the day wait and wasting the day. The forest understood how to defend me, and I was on the verge of rewriting its history. So I would, of course, move this sentence to the very front, to the very beginning. So there would have to be a different sentence at the very end. And I feel like this actually isn't like a bad place to leave off. I feel like that's so cute, the wolf guiding her home. And then the next chapter is her being home and talking to her sister. So I think that this actually is a good place to stop and kind of guides us into the next chapter very well. But I mean, that also is because I moved the final sentence, so it's gonna have to be something different if my suggestion were taken. Yeah, there were a couple of things that I wanted to mention about chapter 2, just because I think that like between the two chapters, chapter 2 is both so much better and so much not than the first chapter. It's so funny to me. So first of all, we have this sentence: though midwinter raged throughout the rest of Guardian, Conviction Woods kept its humid warmth year-round, which is repeated verbatim a page later. Though midwinter raged throughout the rest of Guardian, Conviction Woods kept its humid warmth all year round. I assume that what happened is the author decided she wanted to change the location of this sentence and copy pasted it to one of these locations and then never deleted the original one. But I mean, that is a hell of an error to let slip by, especially when you have a team of people behind you, hopefully ensuring that that doesn't happen. It just is another indication that this needs further editing, because an editor would have, and probably every single reader who read this would have clocked this sentence is repeated verbatim. I did want to just mention the Scorpio code. The Scorpio code recited itself in my head: never show emotions, never befriend others, and never fall in love. It just doesn't have the kind of language that I expect from like a code, especially if this is like a formal government cultural emblem that has presumably been around for like hundreds of years. This just kind of sounds like kind of colloquial language and kind of juvenile in a way. So I'm wondering if maybe this can be written in a way that's a little bit more verbose, a little bit more official and formal sounding. Yeah, and the dialogue I think is both feels stilted but also a little too realistic. The ceremony isn't actually that far away. Mom told me yesterday that it's at the stage near the outskirts of the hub, the one that's slightly down the east trail, the weird location, she said. It's the one you go 20 minutes or so south on the east trail from the house, from the hub. We both passed it before. Like, I can imagine one of my friends saying something very similar to this to me, being like, oh, I was at that weird place where you have to go 20 minutes or so south. Well, none of my friends would use cardinal direction. Well, anyway, those are my edits, my suggestions for the first chapter of Age of Scorpius. I hope that you guys really enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful to some of you guys. If you have any other suggestions, anything that I missed as I was going through this, or anything you would do differently, anything that jumped out at you, please let me know. Let me know in the comments down below. Yeah, this was fun. I hope you guys had a good time. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.